Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Brumfield from Quest. I'd like to welcome you to today's Reconnect Dive Deep session. I have a few reminders before we get started. Attendees will remain muted throughout the session. However, if you'd like to be unmuted to ask a question, use the raise hand feature. A Quest staff member will give you permission to speak at that time. Attendees can also type their questions into the Q&A module in your Zoom toolbar. We will address any questions at the end of the session. At this time, I'll turn things over to our speaker, Tarun, Consulting Manager at Spear MC. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for that intro, Mike. My name is Tarun. I'm a consulting manager at Spear MC. Here's my picture in case you can't see my video. That's also my email and my phone number. So if you have any questions that come out from this session or any general PTF questions, please feel free to send them my way. I'm happy to answer them however I can. Somebody else that you might hear me reference or you might hear from is also my boss, Randy. Here is Randy's information. He's the one who will handle all of our sales related stuff. So if you send an email to me, I may forward it to Randy. Just an FYI. A little bit about me. Spear MC is all over the United States, but I'm located in San Francisco. So that's me over there. And as far as our session today, I mean, Spear MC does all kinds of stuff with PeopleSoft, but we're going to be talking about testing as a service specifically. A little bit more about Spear MC is just, recently we got Gartner recognized, and, that's a pretty big deal. We've got all of this stuff. That's great. We've got some training that's coming up, some public trainings that people can sign up for. Something that might be of interest for folks here today is the one in red at the end here. We've got a PTF for finance, HCM, and campus solutions. Those are 3 different sort of sessions, so that, if you're interested in learning more about how we can use PTF specifically for a pillar, I would really recommend signing up for one of those. And I'll actually be the one teaching those, so you'll see much more of me. But from here, let's get right into it. Our session today is going to be kind of split up into 3 sections. I'm going to talk a little bit about PeopleSoft test framework. I'm going to talk a little bit about the testing grounds, which is a Spear MC bolt-on for PeopleSoft test framework. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about a specific case study, which is when which is about our implementation of PTF at the state of North Dakota and North Dakota University System. So PTF, if you're not sort of already familiar with PTF, PTF is a test automation client that actually comes delivered with PeopleSoft. It was originally built by Oracle for internal testing. And then, they realized that everybody could use this, so they released it for everybody to use. It has gone through many, many changes since it first came out. I think, especially with 8.6.0, a lot of huge improvements were added. And I think that at its core, PTF was really built for test engineers and developers. There's a lot of great features that come with it that you would really expect from any automated testing tool. You can record your tests. It's kind of a record and playback style of testing, similar to Selenium. So you can do recording in Chrome, Edge, Firefox. You can do test execution in Chrome, Edge, Firefox. If you have an older version of your People tools, you might have to do your recording in Internet Explorer. But nowadays, we all know that Internet Explorer is pretty much redundant at this point. You've got test cases to handle different sort of sets of data for each test. You can use shell tests to link together tests to create these long flows of data across end-to-end business processes. You can create a certain set of maintenance reports, and there are some built-in test upgrade tools. So if there's a new People tools upgrade or something, you don't have to worry too much about your PTF tests. There are some automated tools that can set that up for you. So now that I kind of talked through a little bit about that, let's look at what the PTF client actually looks like in this kind of short little demo here. So as you can see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to record a test for us in this sort of demo. Here I'm using an older environment, so we're going to use Internet Explorer for our recording. All it is a matter of logging in. and then using the test recorder tool on the top left to sort of control our recording. So I click record here. I'm going to go through the navigation. I'm going to see if I can kind of, skip us through this a little bit. But as you can see here, I'm going through our navigation, and on the top left on the test recorder panel, you'll see that each of our steps is sort of recorded as I'm going through this. Here you can see that, there's a specific field on the page that I want to record into my test, this business unit. I'm going to go ahead and type that in there. Here, I want to check that the requisition ID has defaulted to next properly. So I'm going to just use the verify option, click and drag that onto the requisition ID field to confirm that it has properly defaulted. I'm going to click the add button. You can see in the test recorder tool on the top left that says okay, and I continue recording my test. And this is really the basis of PTF, is going through recording steps like this and then reviewing them afterwards, making some slight changes to them, perhaps making them more dynamic, which is really where the job of a PTF developer comes in. Or in just making sure that they function with the data that is out there, or setting it up to use with multiple sets of data, that is different test cases. So I'm going to zoom forward a bit here. I'm just creating a requisition. We're not here to create a requisition, so I'm just going to kind of fast forward through this. This is just the recording process. I go through field by field, make sure it's all set up. I click save, and here I'm going to do something pretty interesting. I'm just going to verify that now that I've saved it, that it's been basically pre-approved. So I'm verifying that the status says approved, and then I'm going to stop our test. By stopping the recording, we should have all of our steps populate in the actual PTF client. And the PTF client, if you're not aware, it's kind of similar to App Designer, the way it's set up. It's an application that'll be on your desktop. You'll open it, you'll log in with all your credentials. You have to make sure you have a certain set of PeopleSoft roles that are associated with PeopleSoft Test Framework, and then you're good to go. Here you can see that I'm just, now I'm doing the real job of a PTF developer, which is I am removing some of the sort of unnecessary steps that are associated with this test. Specifically, I was removing all the navigation steps because in PTF, we use something called page prompt to navigate directly to pages instead of going through navigation. And as you can see, I'm kind of going through, I'm reviewing each of the rows one at a time. And the reason why this is set up in rows like this is because PTF functions very simply. It goes row by row, top to bottom, and runs each action. Here, I'm just removing more steps that I don't really need. And I'm going to go ahead and pause it real quick to just show you something. On the right side, we have the value column, and that contains the actual test data within our test. To the left of that, we have parameters, which is combined with the recognition column. Recognition and parameters are used to define what fields we're actually trying to reference with that step. And then to the left of that, we have type and action, which says what type of field is this and what action do we want to do with it. So if we look at the line that I have highlighted, line 14, you can see that there's a link on the page. I want to click it, and here is the name of the link. In that name, if you are familiar with your PeopleSoft records and your PeopleSoft fields, you might notice that there is actually a record name and a field name in there. In that way, PTF kind of associates every single one of its lines with actual PeopleSoft metadata. So the actual record name and actual field name is incorporated into that recognition column. That means that if they move on the page a little bit, you should be good to go. No need to make changes to your test. You're not recording locations you're clicking, you're recording fields you're interacting with. So just gonna click play, continue. I'm continuing my job as a PTF developer, removing a few or selecting a few rows that I feel like I may need or I may not need. In this case, I'm gonna go ahead and delete these because I don't need these. And then just gonna fast forward a bit. Here you can see I'm adding some comments onto my test, and I'm gonna save it. So once you save your test, You can create new test cases if you want. In this case, I'm going to do something that we do as PTF developers, which is we're going to incorporate variables into our test. You can see that in PTF, all of our variables start with an ampersand. So I'm typing ampersand BU underscore ID on line 4. And by putting in variables like this, I'm going to try and build a test that is as dynamic as possible. If I had a test before this that was doing some sort of setup, I could establish a variable in that previous test and pass it on into this test. And that's how the shells sort of work in PTF. You're linking together individual tests in a shell using variables to pass this data across from test to test. So I'm going to zoom forward a little bit. And here I did something which was I set up an execution option. In PTF, the way that we handle our test users is that we create execution options or runtime options, as they're called nowadays. They're very straightforward in that you provide the URL for the application you're using, you provide the PeopleSoft username and password that you're going to log in as, and you name your execution option. From there, you're pretty much good to go. You just select which sort of execution option, which I usually associate with a specific role or maybe a position in your company. Like in this case, you can see I have GL user, AP user. I might have a manager execution option set up as well. And I'll select one of these, and that will be the user with which I'll be running the test. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure these are all set up properly. I'm going to click accept, and then I'm going to run this test. And this is just an example of how it might run. So in this example, I believe I have it set to run in background. So if you haven't seen PTF for a long time, you may be surprised to see stuff running without things clicking on your screen. If you have it set up to run in Chrome, and I think now in Edge as well, you can choose an option to have it run in the background. Then all it'll do is it'll go through the test, it'll populate the log in front of you, but you can kind of do other things if you really want to. Usually what this means for me is that I see it kind of speed up execution a little bit. So if I don't want screenshots as part of my test, I usually run things in the background. If I want screenshots as part of my test, I may choose to run it in the foreground still so that I can capture those screenshots. So here we can see that our test has run completely. It has run with the green flag. The result says pass, and we're good to go. At this point, we have created a new test, recorded a test, made some updates so that it's a little bit more dynamic, run it with a specific user, and seen our results. It's really that fast to get started with your first PTF test. From here, it comes down to getting much more dynamic with it, creating multiple tests, creating multiple test cases for different sets of data, and really associating those things together. And if you're interested in learning more about stuff like that, we do have those trainings that I mentioned earlier. I think our next one that we have coming up is on December 11th for Campus Solutions. We've got a PTF training. But if you're working with finance or HCM, feel free to send me an email and we can look at setting up a separate class for you guys if you want to learn a little bit more. Okay, so that wraps up our sort of PTF tool review. Let's talk a little bit about the testing grounds. What is it? We'll talk first about why we needed to create it. So PTF is amazing, does a lot of great things for us when it comes to functional testing. So Oracle's delivered PTF client has great features designed for, maintaining, creating, running our test libraries, but the PTF client didn't deliver some of the kind of reporting and editing, like online editing functionality that we found that some of our users were needing. So we built a bolt-on. The bolt-on is called the SpearMC Testing Grounds. It's got a whole bunch of features. Here are some highlights. The real big ones are, we've got dashboards. With the dashboards, you can drill down to specific errors and error screenshots. You can manage data online. That is, change your data values from PeopleSoft Online. Obviously, you can export your execution logs as PDF files so that you can save them for audits. You can basically set up test cycles using a portion of our tool, and then generate a batch file where you simply run the batch file and you can run a full test cycle. And then evidence reports, which really is associated with the execution logs there. Here's a little graphic that kind of shows all of the stuff that we got going on. One thing that I haven't mentioned is that at the very bottom, we've got the gold library. That's a set of pre-built scripts that we built in a demo environment to work with finance, HCM, ELM, and campus solutions. And we sell those in most of our sort of engagements, either as part of our testing as a service, or if you just purchase testing grounds. That sort of gold library, the idea is to kind of accelerate your adoption of PTF, give you a little head start. If anything, even if you find that some of the functionality doesn't apply as much to your organization, we also have sort of Excel spreadsheets associated with each of these tests. So during all of our engagements, we'll bring our gold library into the engagement, start with these Excel spreadsheets that we have, ask clients to update that Excel spreadsheet, and it really gives us a head start into that sort of test documentation and preparation for the actual build process. And since the testing grounds was built as just a bolt-on, implementation is super straightforward. We've even written up a DIY guide to set it up yourself. Migrate it in, make sure your security is set up, and then just verify in the environment that you're good to go. I got a short little video here, just showing some of the features in an actual environment. So let's say you're pulling up the dashboard, you want to see how your tests are running. All of our folders here are basically organized according to our PTF folders. That is our folders in the client themselves. Now that we select one, we can kind of drill down and see all the tests within there. Here, you can see that we have different results that are listed. Let's say I want to look at one of my errors and see why it failed. I can pull up the log online. This is in PeopleSoft. And you can scroll down to the bottom, and in the sort of standard PTF way, when an error happens, a screenshot is recorded. So here we're going to take a look at our error. We have the error message listed there. So as an end user, I don't have to open up PTF to find out why something is errored. And I get a little screenshot associated with it to see why this test has failed. From here, maybe I decide, this is actually a defect, and I need to go file it in some sort of ticketing software, or quite possibly, maybe it's just a data issue. And it's like, hey, this data is old. I need to update it. As an end user, I can now make those updates myself. So as you can see, I went ahead and went into the update test data page. Here, I've pulled up the test. I pulled up the test case that was run, and we're going to go ahead and update some of the data here. Let's say the account number was incorrect. Let me just make the change. Oops, it was a little typo. Needed to put in a 1 at the end or something like that. Now I can update all this data online and then pass it back to our actual developers or testers who are running these processes. You can see on this page, there's also a print manual script button. Clicking this will generate an Excel spreadsheet. And these are the Excel spreadsheets that I mentioned earlier that we're using for kind of to give us a head start on all of our projects. So beyond that dashboard, we also have kind of this operational dashboard. On this page, you can create various modules. These are modules that are defined by you. Usually, I'll align them with actual PeopleSoft modules. Within each module, or maybe you want to set it up as a test cycle. Like in this case, I've set it up as a regression test cycle. I'm going to associate different tests in a certain order. Here, by associating all these tests in a specific order, we can then output a batch file that will run each of these PTF tests in order. So I'm just going through filling out all the details required for this page, selecting test names, selecting test cases, providing a little bit of comments in there, maybe associated with some business process for my documentation, and then very importantly, identifying an execution profile to attach with this test. So You can see that on this page, we also have the update data button in case you need to, make any changes before you run the script, or if you need to check, you can print the manual script just to check, make sure it is what you remember it was. You'd save it and then you'd click the run auto script button. And here you can see it has created a batch file for us. Running this batch file, as long as you have PTF installed, means that it'll open up PTF and it's going to run all those tests in order. Now, our last sort of section of the bolt-on is the test evidence report. So as part of our test evidence report, you have a certain set of criteria here at the top. You can select your start date, end date, what module, that is like what folder you want to be looking in, a specific test. You can kind of drill down that far. Here, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward a little bit as I select, I want to find tests that were run way back when. Here are the sort of log results I'm looking for. I'm looking for specifically past tests, because let's say that I had a testing cycle during this period. I just want to confirm that we had run tests for this. And so that level of auditing can be very useful, to have online. But really what we built it for was for the fact that now that you can view it online, you'll usually want to, and I'm going to skip forward a little bit. I'm just going to change this a bit, and I'm going to want to export this as a PDF. So I'll probably use the detailed report option, which is my personal favorite because it has every single row that was in the log in the PDF. And of course, got to have the screenshots. What would it be without screenshots? So there we go. We've got a way to view dashboards online. We've got a way to kind of set up test cycles online, and we've got a way to export your test, basically results, using the test evidence tool. I've got a few screenshots here, just continuing our sort of deep dive into the testing grounds here. Here's the dashboard. We've got a set of bar charts that you can set up, assuming that you've got your pivot grids ready to roll. And then here I've got the dashboard again. You have the action menu underneath which you can open up detailed logs or update test data if you need to. This is an example of one of the more detailed logs that I've pulled up. And here I'm pulling up a specific error screenshot just to, confirm why it failed. Here I've decided, maybe I need to update the test data. I've got the update test data page. And then we're on the sort of operational dashboard here where you can define a sort of test cycle and click the run auto script button to create this sort of one-click batch script that should launch all of these guides in order. Finally, we've got the PDF test evidence report page where you can filter by a certain set of results and then export out into a PDF as needed. Okay. We're going to go into our third sort of section of the presentation today, which is talking about a specific case study of how we've been using PTF at the state of North Dakota and North Dakota University system. So I'm going to sort of arrange this in a sort of star format. We're going to talk about the situation, the task, our actions, and the results of those. So our situation was that the state of North Dakota, which I'll be calling the state, and the North Dakota University system, which I might be calling NDUS, own 6 pillars of PeopleSoft with quite a bit of customizations. That's 2 finance pillars, 2 HCM, 1 ELM, and 1 campus solutions. That's pretty huge. That's a lot of testing. So obviously they had a need to reduce their manual testing effort while still maintaining a certain level of accuracy and precision with their testing. The thing was that they didn't have any automated PeopleSoft testing at this point. Everything is kind of done manually, and that's going to take a large amount of time and effort. And we might not talk about it as much, but staff turnover is a big deal when it comes to testing. When folks leave, they take with them all the tests that they may have been doing during these various PUM updates and such, unless it's all documented. Automating things is another way to handle that sort of staff turnover and its effect on testing as well. The state specifically, especially, had limited to no regression testing as well, and that's really where PTF happens to shine. And so keeping up with PUM updates is kind of a constant struggle. And North Dakota, props to them, they are very current. Like, they are super current. And I think that it's that sort of commitment to staying current that drove their need for automated testing. So the task was then, to implement PeopleSoft test framework. Our task was to create kind of a robust suite of automated tests. And these tests were to be designed to cover a wide range of scenarios to ensure functionality across the PeopleSoft systems. And our plan was kind of to build over 700 PTF tests to kind of comprehensively validate and test systems along with end-to-end processes, and identify any potential issues. So, in fact, a very specific set of goals were outlined in North Dakota's RFP, which we had responded to. And here are those goals that were outlined. They wanted to identify any sort of anomalies, defects, reduce their regression testing efforts while maintaining accuracy. They want to consistently test across different environments. So, if you're in your dev environment, you don't want to test differently than you're in your test or your QA. You want to try and keep that consistency across environments. They want to increase their current testing capacity. So, going from little to no regression testing to quite a bit, reduce manual testing greatly, reduce the risk of project failures due to missed defects from poor testing, reduce the time and resources required to move updates to production, and to get some sort of reporting to show how testing went, and what were the results of your testing. So with this task in mind, there was basically the state of North Dakota and NDUS subscribed to SpearMC's testing as a service, which included the testing grounds, our gold library of pre-built scripts, a test build process, ongoing updates, training, and full test cycles run by the SpearMC team. Here's a quick overview of the kind of 700 plus tests that we decided that we needed during our sort of requirements gathering phase. The question now was how we were actually going to build these. So we started our process. First, requirements gathering. We initiated the project, collaborating kind of closely with NDUS and the state, identifying critical business processes, transactions, and system functions that required testing. So these processes were, all over the place because we're looking at a ton of pillars that went everything from payroll processing to financial reporting to student records. So once we were done with our sort of requirements gathering, we move into our test design. So with a clear understanding of our requirements, we start the test design by categorizing tests into our modules and scenarios. Each scenario had multiple test cases at times to cover different sort of user interactions. And we had our Excel documentation for each test case, which would be used by developers to then create the tests. Each of these tests, these sort of documentation, pieces of documentation was then updated by the client. So our team of experts then starts test development, creating these test scripts and establishing, more dynamic shells and, attaching these scripts together to create these longer sort of streams of data. Once we're done developing the PTF tests, we hand them over for approval. And this phase is super important because we don't want to miss anything in our testing. So we kind of iterate with the client back and forth until we get our sort of 100% approval and we're reaching the expected results. And as discrepancies are detected during our test development and execution, we go through issue resolution, setting up meetings. We have our sort of cadence meeting once a week with the teams on the client side, make sure that we are resolving everything the way we want to. Sometimes these were PTF script issues, but we occasionally also unearthed actual defects during our development process as well. And then finally, we've got documentation. Throughout the project, we're maintaining this sort of detailed documentation of all of our test cases, test data, and test results. And that serves as like a really valuable ongoing resource for us to maintain our testing systems and to track new tests and test cases. We just create things using the same format and then hand it over to our developers to build. Now we're down to the last minute, so I'm going to kind of zoom through these last bits. The way that we set up the projects, I've got a few screenshots, just some Gantt charts of those. State, where we really tried to kind of pile everything on top of each other a little bit, did all the pillars simultaneously. While at NDUS, we kind of split them up, and I really found that splitting them up helped because there's a big sort of back and forth effort. And let's talk about results. So we were able to identify anomalies, reduce regression testing efforts. We were able to test across environments, able to increase current testing capacity, able to reduce manual testing, able to reduce the risk of project failures, able to reduce the time and resources required, and able to show some reporting. But beyond this, there was a little bit more. We were able to, make sure that all of the nowadays, all the PUM applications remain within 2 to 3 images of current. We're able to incorporate the majority of our customizations in our automated testing, and we're seeing huge reductions in testing cycle times. In some cases, it's as short as 2 days in some of our environments. So with all of that in mind, I think that it has been quite a process getting through all of this. It is huge, lots of pillars, lots of tests, but now we're sort of at this cadence where through testing as a service, we're able to generate big results in terms of testing improvements for our clients. So if any of that was interesting to you, if you have any additional questions, feel free to send them my way. Again, my name's Tarun. Here's my email. There's my phone number. Send me a text if that's better for you. Send me an email. That's best. And I'll probably incorporate Randy whenever needed. But thank you so much for your time today. I hope you're enjoying your conference. If you're interested, SpearMC is doing an OGL presentation, I believe, right after this, starting right now. So head on over there. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.